We continue with Tigers Roar. I'm Tommy Krysan. Appreciate you being tuned in. Don't forget the original airing of this program each and every week is Wednesday night, 8 to 10, 2 hours prime time live. Got replays going the rest of the week, but we appreciate you watching Tigers Roar whenever you are able to. And as always, spread the roar. We're spreading it around tonight a little bit. I want to welcome to the program the head coach of the women's lacrosse team out at LSU, Casey McDonald. Casey, good evening. How are you?
Good evening, Tommy. Nice to meet you. I'm doing well. I'm trying to stay warm and dry.
Yeah, this weather's a little rough out there. A couple weeks back, we had Jeff Eccles of the men's lacrosse program on the program with us, and Andrew and our staff and you communicate. I said, well, heck, let's get the women's program on there. We gotta give a fair shout out in all directions there. A couple of questions for you. First off, you guys are into your season already.
Yes, sir.
We're going to pretend people don't know much about it, but talk about how the season is going so far.
Season's great. Just like the men's program, we're off to our best start in program history. We're 3-0 right now, 2-0 in conference division play. We've beaten Baylor, we've beaten Sam Houston State, and we beat Houston those last two this last weekend. And we're heading up to North Texas this weekend to take on University of North Texas and TCU in two more crucial division games.
Let's talk about the history of the women's lacrosse program at LSU. How long has it been around? When did it come to be? I mean, give us the quick rundown on the history of women's lacrosse at LSU.
Sure. The brief history is it's been off and on throughout the last couple of decades. As you know, the men's team's been around since the late 70s. The women's team has shot up and kind of gone off from here and there throughout that same time period. When I played at LSU for the men's team, they had a team 2 of the 5 years I was here. Most recently, though, in our current success, in our current streak, we've got a program since about 2011, and we've got into our conference, which is the Women's Collegiate Lacrosse Association, which is our governing body. And then our conference is the Texas Women's Lacrosse League, made up of SMU, Texas, Texas A&M, TCU, North Texas, Texas State, Sam Houston State, LSU, Oklahoma, teams like that. We've been in that conference now 3 full seasons, and we've been rocking and rolling. We've made the playoffs the first 2 seasons in conference play, and we're looking to do it again.
Well, let's talk about the women's program. And, you know, it's not a part of the athletic department, as
That's
is
correct.
the men's program. So that presents certain challenges to you, but it is a part of LSU, and you're competing with other universities. And, I mean, is there a goal one day down the road to maybe the athletic department says, hey, let's add women's lacrosse, let's add men's lacrosse to the athletic department? You see that maybe in the future?
I do. The University of Florida, you know, as much as we rival with them, they have really paved the way for women's lacrosse in the SEC. 5 years ago, they were just a club program just like we were. They're a very successful club program, and their athletic director and Pat Dooley really invested a lot of money and a lot of energy into the program, and they have made the NCAA tournament in the last 4 years. They hosted some games, and they've beaten some traditional powerhouses. You know, they have their own facility, they have their own locker rooms, they have everything, they've got the support. We would love to get to that level here at LSU. You know, we bring up a great level of GPA status, some student athletes that are going to graduate and go on to be positive members of the LSU alumni community.
And talking about the women's lacrosse program, it's a little bit different than the men's game. I learned, a lot of the viewers of Tigers Roar learned a lot about lacrosse with Coach Eccles a couple of weeks ago. But I know there are some differences. I'm learning every day, right?
Absolutely.
We always got to keep learning.
That's what we're here for.
What are the differences between the women's lacrosse game and the men's? Obviously, a lot of similarities, but there are differences.
There's a lot of similarities. We play on approximately the same size field. Our field is actually a little bit longer and a little bit wider than the men's game, and our goals are located a little bit further back from the midfield than the men's game. The second main difference is women's lacrosse is a non-contact sport. It's more about finesse. It's more about poetry and motion. We have a different strung lacrosse stick. Our sticks are strung a little bit different. As you can see, you saw last week with Coach Eccles, a men's lacrosse stick has a deep pocket, a little bit more intricate stringing that's going to give you more whip, more trajectory on the ball. Whereas a women's lacrosse stick is going to be strung a little different to where it's more of a pass and catch and hold game. And also, as you can tell, the ball comes out a lot easier than it does on a men's stick, where it's going to take a little bit more time. This allows for a lot more control in terms of the offense when moving the ball around the field. It's a lot like women's basketball in the set. You're going to see a lot more set plays. You're going to see a lot more intentional action to get the defense to move and to get the goalie out of position to score.
And obviously one difference being the color of the ball. The men's ball is white. The women's ball is gold, yellow. A la softball, as you know, you have it with the baseball team and the softball team, and that's common in all schools. So that's standard across the board. It's always a yellow ball.
It's always a yellow ball, except for and when it's a snow game, if the yellow's a little difficult, they'll play with an orange ball.
Okay. All right. And now, how many people on your roster? You play with 10 on the field, as do the men. Is that a similarity?
We play a little bit different. That's another difference. We play with one goalie, and we do have our goalie helmet here. We play with 4 defenders, 3 midfielders, and 4 attack women. So we play with a little bit of a difference. That we have a starting 11 as opposed to a starting 10 like the men's game does. The restraining lines are a little similar. You'll see those on the graphics. You know, the way our girls can move up and down the field. But essentially, it's a 7-on-7 game in terms of the offensive defensive side, working the ball around.
All right, now let me ask you this. Let's go. You got to get lacrosse players from somewhere. Excuse my ignorance, but do they have any girls lacrosse teams at the high school level? I know there are lacrosse clubs and their teams, a la travel teams and summer baseball for youngsters and softball. How do you go about getting players? What's the feeder program to women's lacrosse?
Sure. For us specifically, there's a couple of high school teams in the state of Louisiana. The traditional teams are up in the Shreveport area, Caddo, C.E. Bird, a lot of those high schools in that area. And New Orleans has gotten a couple of teams in the late running here. Carrollton High School is one of the big front runners there in the New Orleans area. For us, the feeder is more of the LSU student body. You know, with LSU's increased admission standards, we've been able to attract some really smart players from all over the country and outside the state specifically. 7 of our team members are from the hotbeds of lacrosse, which would be the Maryland, Massachusetts, New York area. We've got one girl from Long Island who's been in the program a couple of years, Boston, Massachusetts, a couple of them sprinkled throughout Maryland. And that makes up a good wealth of our talent in that level, because that northeastern area is where girls lacrosse is prevalent. The state of Florida is the next area where it's going to be the closest to be the prevalent, because it is a varsity sport in the state of Florida. We've got a couple girls from Texas, a couple from California, and one from Colorado.
You have a starting 11. How many on the roster?
We have 21 girls on our roster.
Is that typical or less or more?
You know, so it depends on different teams. Some of our teams in our conference are going to have a little bit less because they're a younger program. You know, when I took over a couple of years ago, we only had about 18 girls, so we've grown up and grabbed a couple more.
Well, what's the ideal number for women?
The ideal number is going to be in the high 20s, low 30s, so that you can have some solid competition.
You're going to get an injury. I mean, injuries are part of all sports.
Injuries are going to happen. You know, the goalies specifically, you know, they're taking shots of, you know, upwards of 50, 60 miles an hour, and you know, even with the pads that they wear, that's still going to sting, and that's going to cause some injuries here and there. So we're lucky to have 2 goalies on our roster, and a lot of players that can play both ways.
Well, you know, and when I first was looking into all the stuff that you and Andrew had sent to me, I'm thinking, well, there's differences in the game, but there's differences in baseball and softball.
Exactly.
Lots of differences. The men's basketball and the women's basketball is a different size. The three-point line's a different spot. So that's kind of common to find the differences, but I think most notably the lack of the physical. I mean, there's checking allowed in the men's game, and it's a much more physical game. They wear more pads, they wear more gear. But as you said, this is more of a finesse game, set it up, run a play. For those that are going to want to watch this, it's different to that degree.
It is to that degree. Now, the one thing we definitely want to include is checking is allowed for checking of the stick specifically. So as long as you're carrying the ball outside of your sphere, which is the area between your shoulders where women are allowed to carry, as long as you check on the stick and not the hands, you're allowed to make that contact, which is one of the ways to dislodge the ball. The other way, and very simply, is that occasional body contact. And it's not so much brute strength contact like in the men's game, but just like in women's basketball, you're going to set picks, you're going to have rolls, and you're going to have that contact. And a lot of times that contact, that motion, causes the ball to lodge out, and that's going to cause your turnovers in your scrums.
All right, going forward, you said you have a road trip to North Texas this week.
We do.
Are there any more home games at the UREC field?
We are done this season on the schedule for home games. We've played our 4 home games this spring. We're looking to pick up a game with Flagler Gulf Coast out of Florida. Hopefully we can make that happen in March. Unfortunately, 2 teams in our conference have canceled games due to their roster sizes being a little too small. So that kind of halted our March home game schedule. But we do travel to North Texas at the end of this month, and then we travel to Texas State and San Marcos at the end of March.
Well, tell people how they can follow you via the social media world. I'm sure you guys have all that going from Facebook. Give everybody a rundown, a website, anything
Absolutely.
that will help them become more acquainted with this. And then next year, we want to get you in here well before the season begins so that, you know, more
Absolutely.
word can get out in advance where they can maybe get out and watch a home game and keep up with the team. So give everybody your rundown there.
Absolutely. On Facebook, we're very easy to find. We're the LSU Women's Lacrosse Club on
That is
Facebook.
simply put.
Very simply put. On Twitter, we're at LSU Women's Lax. The same for Instagram. And then in terms of a website to follow most of our information, it's going to be WCLA.us. That is our governing body of club lacrosse for the women's level across the nation. There's over, I believe, latest count was over 300 club programs playing all over the country. You simply go to that website, you look up under the D2 ranks and grab LSU or Louisiana State as it's listed, and that's how you find us.
You know, I knew this, and I was reminded this week, but LAX is short for lacrosse. That's a given term. It is the name of the three-letter abbreviation for the airport in Los Angeles. However, it means lacrosse in the world of sports.
That
okay?
is correct.
So,
that is correct.
Final question. Is there any connection between the men's and women's programs at LSU? They're both club teams. Neither are part of the athletic department. And I was in a meeting with Coach Eccles earlier this week. I mean, he said, you know, y'all are trying to boost and support each other because it's just like coming on here. We want to make more people aware.
We appreciate that, and very fortunately we are. Coach Eccles and I have a great relationship. I'm a former coach of the men's team as well and player. So the game of lacrosse to me needs to grow here in South Louisiana. So Coach Eccles and I work very close together. We've worked to try and schedule some games home and away where we're in the same place, generally the same time, so we can double up on fans. We support each other for our fundraisers. Actually, right now, our fundraiser going on at Chipotle off of Highland Road and State is going on, and a lot of the men's team is coming over to have their meal at Chipotle with a portion of our proceeds going to the program. You know, we support each other's social media. We retweet, we share, we attend each other's games. It's a really solid group effort through the LSU UREC, who has provided us a lot of support as well with facility, some uniform assistance and things like that.
Well, I can tell you, we're going to have the men's lacrosse match game with ULL. We're going to tape it for television broadcast later this year. And I don't know if you noticed yet, but we're planning to get with you to record a little something that can be inserted into that game
I would love
as a promotion for the women. So we'll be in touch with you on
Excellent.
that. Best of
Looking
luck to
forward
you
to
guys. Let's get on the front end of this next year.
Certainly.
Please keep Andrew and myself posted on everything that's going, and we'll all connect social media-wise, and wish you the best of the luck and keep growing that program. And we'll do our part to help make people aware of you throughout South Louisiana.
We certainly appreciate that, Tommy.
All right, that's Casey McDonald, head coach of the women's lacrosse team at LSU. When we come back, we'll talk about Lady Tigers softball. We'll be joined by Coach Beth Torina. They're off to one of the best starts in school history. We'll do that when we return with more of Tigers Roar here on Pelican Sports TV, Baton Rouge, Lafayette, New Orleans, and all over the world on the internet at PelicanSportsTV.com. Stay with us.